Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Clark. I serve as the Director of Business and Finance for the Sun Prairie Area School District. I'm here tonight to talk through the adoption of the 25-26 budget. And really, conversations around this 25-26 budget start in December of 2024. So we've been planning around this budget following our 25-26 strategic-based budget and staffing planning calendar, which is linked in the situation report below. What made this year's process more challenging is that it was also a state biennium budget year. So every 2 years, the state approves a biennium budget, and school districts across the state wait to hear what those final budget assumptions are so that they can budget. So again, throughout the summer and into the fall, we presented the preliminary budget in July, following the passage of the state budget, and then the proposed budget in August, which was approved by the school board. And then that proposed budget was again presented at the annual meeting on October 6th. All of that work and all of those presentations are before we know our final numbers for important things like state aid and equalized value and pupil count. So we received those final numbers on October 15th. And since then, we've been finalizing this proposed budget for the board's hopefully approval tonight. And first, I just want to highlight briefly the revenue limit worksheet. So I'm going to share that on the screen here. In this revenue limit worksheet, I'm not going to go through every single line, but this is a very important document to at least have some understanding of, as it gives school districts across the state a lot of their final budgeting information each year. So again, every October 15th, we find out a lot of these numbers and we don't know them prior to then. So one of the key pieces of information that we find out is the third Friday FTE and summer school FTE, which you can find here in that the box kind of in the middle of your screen with those yellow numbers. So from 2024 to 2025, you can see that we've increased in the summer school FTE by about 8 FTE. That is then taken we only receive 40% of that, so an increase of 3. But then the summer school or the September FTE is our third Friday pupil count, which we hold each year. As you can see, that number went down a little over 50 FTE, which is more than we had initially projected and budgeted for. The new independent charter schools are also listed. We really don't have much of an idea of what that will be until the 15th. So that did go up a little bit, which then feeds into the total FTE. And one thing to note with the revenue limit formula is that it doesn't take your total FTE each year. It takes the 3-year average of your total FTE. So that green cell of 8,372 is the 3-year rolling average of the FTE. So even though we are decreasing in our total FTE from 2024 to 2025, the year 2022 was the lowest of the 3 years. So even though 2025 is lower than last year, our 3-year average is still increasing. So the revenue limit formula essentially takes that 8,372 that you can see in that green cell, and in the upper right-hand corner in row 3 is the revenue per member. So that's 17,044.31 is what we receive per FTE. That number then increased in row 4 in the biennium budget by 325, which was part of the state budget, to then give us in row 5 our final maximum revenue per member of 17,369.31. We take that number multiplied by the 8,372, which is that 3-year rolling average, and that essentially provides us with our revenue limit. So if you remember, our revenue limit subtracted by state aid then equals our tax levy. And there's a lot of exemptions that I won't go through in those yellow slides, but really the key cell to know is that in row 12A is our October 15 certification of general aid. What that essentially means is it's our final state aid number. and that number came in at 61,521,076, which is a slight increase from the prior year, but a lot lower than we had anticipated, and I'll go through that in a second. So looking big picture, taking that revenue limit total amount, which was our per member multiplied by that 3-year average, subtracting that October 15th state aid amount, then is our levy. So our general levy is in row 13, that 83,421,135. We bring in our other levies for our debt service, community service, as well as some chargebacks. We get our total school-based tax levy of 93,906,896 in row 16. Another piece of information I just want to note on the revenue limit worksheet is also in row 16, a little bit to the left in that yellow cell, is our equalized value. So let me bring that over a little bit. The fall 2025 property values, we had budgeted at a 6% increase in those property values. This number came in October 15th at about $9.2 billion of property value, which is an increase of 7.88% from the prior year. And why that's important is because that number then feeds into our levy rate or mill rate, which came in at $10.21, which is lower than we had presented at the annual meeting due to those property values. So I'm going to go back to the situation report just to finish up, but essentially the revenue limit worksheet is provides us with all of our final budgeting information that we need to know to then be able to come to you with final numbers in late October each year. So as part of all of the information that we find out on October 15th, these are the major adjustments that we've made to the proposed budget since the annual meeting. So I'll just go through these briefly, but these are the big ticket items. So on the revenue limit worksheet, I pointed out that third Friday in September FTE versus summer school. So we had budgeted a decrease of 8 FTE for our third Friday, which actually ended up being a decrease of 53 FTE. So adjusting that within our budget, as well as the open enrollment in and out amounts. So if you remember back to some of my presentations, we receive money when students open enroll into our district, and we pay an expense when they open enroll out of our district. So we budget a best guess until the third Friday in September. So as you can see in bullet points number 2 and in number 5, that's us adjusting for the actual revenue and expense after the third Friday. Point number 3, the equalized aid decrease of 800,000 less than what was presented at the annual meeting, largely due to 2 things. One was the fact that within the state budget, no increase was provided to the state aid funding pool, as well as we had some larger districts delay submission on some of their financials, not necessarily on purpose, but it does throw off our calculations and estimates that we received from DPI in July and August. So that was something that we had to account for in this final budget that's being presented. Going back to the revenue limit formula, the revenue limit authority subtracted from that state aid number then gives us our levy. So because state aid came in $800,000 less than we had anticipated, that number then has to be passed on to our tax levy, onto our taxpayers. So they 861,000 tax levy increase, again, largely due to the decrease in state aid, as well as independent charter schools and private school vouchers, which we also have to levy for. So after incorporating these big ticket items, these major adjustments, as well as some other adjustments that we make each year, this budget does continue to be balanced, which is a highlight that we want to make sure we communicate. We'll continue to update the budget quarterly throughout the fiscal year, so you'll be able to see those. Like I said, quarterly, we'll be presenting that to the board of any updated grants or donations that we get that we revise the budget for. The entire Sun Prairie Area School District budget, inclusive of all funds, is $221 million. So that is all outlined in our attachment 1, which is the budget adoption document, which I'll show real quickly. This is the state required document that has to be approved. This essentially gives us our audited financials from 23-24, our unaudited financials from 24-25, which will become audited this winter, and then the 25-26 budget that is before you tonight. This is sorted by fund as well as function as you get lower, to give you a little bit more information on where our budget lies within these account codes. There's a lot of information on here, as well as a lot of information that I've presented tonight. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me at any point with any questions that you have. But thank you so much for your time. And again, reach out if you need anything. Thank you.